Welcome to the Ultimate Mixtape, an interactive podcast on a mission to create an epic playlist. With submissions from your host, creative guests, and superfans along the way. What songs will make the cut? This podcast is about music, friends, and memories. Share your favorite stories on www.theultimatemixtape.com to join in the podcast fun. Here's your host, Jess Manzilla.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us for the Ultimate Mixtape. I have with me, as always, my partner in crime and life, Jimmy McFadden.
Hey, guys.
And in this interview, we are actually talking with Steve Parpart. He is from the Something in the Wilderness podcast, and he's an Andrew McMahon superfan just like us. So we wanted to dig a little deeper with him, get to know him better, and find out what it was like when he actually got to interview Andrew McMahon himself. So go ahead, sit back and relax, and here's our interview with Steve. Welcome, Steve Parpart from the Something in the Wilderness podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Today.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm so glad to be here. It's really exciting to be on your podcast. Been looking forward to it. So you guys have had some awesome guests lately. I just listened to your last couple of episodes. I'm super excited and a little leery to follow them up. Those were some really cool guys that you guys are talking to. So
we're just happy to have you here because you're an Andrew super fan. We're Andrew super fans. And if you don't know who Andrew is, I'm talking about Andrew McMahon. And we've been fans for so long. I know I've seen you at so many shows. It's going to be fun this time around to pick your brain a little bit and get to know you a little bit more too, because we haven't really gotten a chance to connect and really talk about Andrew's music together. So this will be fun.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we've been in at least one of the same places, but I think we'll probably talk about that.
Yes.
I think we will. So before we start getting into this album, I really just wanted to learn a little bit more about you. And you actually do have your own podcast, and it's basically dedicated to Andrew McMahon's discography. So how did you decide that you wanted to focus on Andrew's music, and what really sparked that for you?
So oddly enough, crazy enough, it was fall of 2019 was the first time I ever listened to a podcast, period, which just seems crazy because it was only 3.5 years ago. But I ended up starting a new job where I was driving a little bit more, some long distances, and then working from home on the majority of my days. So I had a lot of time to play music or listen to podcasts. And I just decided to start listening to music podcasts, music interviews, and then specifically Weezer podcasts. I love the band Weezer.
Oh, no. Yeah.
And there's
Who doesn't love Weezer?
there's an odd high number of Weezer podcasts out there. So I binged 5 Weezer podcasts, and they range from 10 episodes to 60 episodes, right? Or maybe 75 is the highest. And I became inspired. And so I started thinking, I was like, okay, now that I've went through the Weezer podcast, now I got to find an Andrew McMahon podcast because he's my favorite artist. So started going through and I was like, wait, there's interviews out there with him, but there's no podcast dedicated to Andrew. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So it was it took a few months to get off the ground for reasons you guys know that have a podcast, it takes some time. But what really happened was the pandemic. Like a lot of us, we found ourselves in this place where we have a lot more free time. Some people took up new hobbies, and that's what happened to me. But mostly it was an inspiration from Andrew's Instagram live streams. So just that sense of community and that connection that I needed in that moment in time when you couldn't see your friends, you couldn't even see your family. I have a wife and kids, which I'm very grateful for. I honestly don't know how people did it that don't live with somebody, that just lived alone during lockdown. But I look forward to those nights where Andrew would come on Instagram and he would just talk to us and he would play us music. And I was like, damn it, I have to do this. I have to do an Andrew McMahon podcast now. And so I started taking notes and doing research on how to start it. And I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but that's basically what inspired it. I did some searching on different websites, like communities like Facebook and Reddit. Found out that there was this huge Facebook fan group about Andrew McMahon. And so I joined that, and I was like, okay, so there's already a community out there. I don't need to start a community. I just want to be part of a community. So I just want to join a community and contribute in some way. And so that's kind of where I found my place in it.
That's awesome. I remember those lives. It was like, that's what we would look forward to every week, because it was like, there's nothing going on at home. It's like working from home. Like, I want to go to the grocery store, and you can't even do that. So it was like, when Andrew would announce he's doing a live, it was like, finally, we have something to look forward to.
That was pretty unique, because he wasn't really doing a lot of those before.
No.
So he had started doing that really during the pandemic. And I mean, you could even just see in the comments how much that meant to people, because, you know, it's like a lifeline, you know what I mean?
But he probably needed it too.
Oh, he's expressed that to me. You know how Andrew meets his fans before and after shows. And so I've been fortunate enough to meet him after a show. And the first time I got to meet him, I told him that, how much I had needed that and how great it was. And he's like, man, I needed it too. He's like, that was as much for me as it was for you. And that's just Andrew McMahon right there. You know, he's such a good dude. And it was, you know, he's not only very personable and craves that connection to his fans. He relates to his fans, and he's very genuine.
I mean, that's pretty cool that you took an idea and just ran with it, like made your own thing, like started your own little niche, because you're right. There's really not any other podcast that kind of cater towards his music in particular, but he's got such a huge catalog. So that is such a great way to like keep going. And now he just released that new album. So kudos to you for paving your own way on that. And even with your podcast, you actually got a chance to interview Andrew himself, which is pretty awesome.
Now, life goals.
Yes. Bucket list item, right? And I listened. You held your composure very well, but were you secretly freaking out inside?
Okay. I got to say, I freaked out more ahead of time. So when I had the initial email from his management, and then I talked on the phone with one of his managers, that I was so scared to get on the phone with that person, just because I knew it was real and I wanted it to be real, but I don't know, it's hard to describe. It's like, but that was the moment when I was most freaked out. I was like, I said to my wife, I don't know, should I
this could really happen? Yeah,
should I do this? And she's like, why wouldn't you? And I was like, I don't know, like I always thought it would happen, kind of like, or hope, I guess I didn't think, but I always hoped it would happen at some point. And now it was happening, and I guess it happened sooner than I expected or something. And so I was like, I guess I'm doing this. And you know, when I get on with the average guest, when I say the average guest, I mean like any person that's just a fan of Andrew McMahon that comes on the podcast, I get a little nervous just talking to a stranger, you know, and finding that connection. But to talk to the guy who makes the music that I put so much thought and research and conversation into, and the guy who's been writing the soundtrack to my life essentially for 20 years, I get the chance to talk to him and ask him questions about that same music. I was a little freaked out.
How could you not be?
We laughed about it, because I mean, I was thinking about it. I've literally listened to him for over half of my life. It's completely insane. So I love that you got that chance to really have that like one-on-one conversation with him and dig a little bit deeper. You got to talk about one of his newer songs, which was awesome. Before the album even came out. So that's pretty cool. Like, congratulations.
Thanks. I felt very privileged over the whole thing, because they sent me that song a month before it came out, and they were just like, you can't tell anybody, or you can't, obviously, I mean, they didn't say you can't tell anybody. You can't release the song. And I was like, I know it's cool. Like, but they were like, we're going to give you a little bit of time to live with it. And then, you know, Andrew will be on the Zoom on this day. And I was like, So I'm just going to sign into a Zoom and Andrew's going to be there. And that's exactly what happened. It was so surreal. But really in that moment, I was less freaked out than the initial because I had time to prepare. I had time to think about it, get my nerves calmed. But it was really my wife that helped me out, get mentally ready. She was like, remember, you're a fan first. You're not a journalist. You're not just a podcaster. You're a fan, and you're a fan talking to your favorite artist. And I was like, that's right. I'm going to go in and I'm going to be a fan. I'm not going to like lose my composure. I'm going to be professional in a sense, but I'm a fan first. And I wanted that to come across in the recording, and I hope it did.
It did. It
definitely did. Yeah, for sure.
I took some time to gush a little bit. So if you've heard the episode, you heard that part. I just wanted to let him know how I felt and make sure he knew how important the music was to me, and how important this moment was. And I even told him afterward, what I told you earlier. I was like, this is like a life goal, man. This is the, hobby, at least hobby wise, this is like the pinnacle. So
that's You're like, cool.
This is my last episode. I'm done now. Like, this is
that did cross my mind. I was like, so what now?
Now you just gotta like get his parents or something.
Now, I mean, I've thought about asking other band members, either former or current, but I haven't gone there yet. So we'll see. We'll see where things go. There's been not surprisingly, a lot of people have reached out to be on the podcast since. So I haven't had a lack of guests, but maybe when the well dries up a little bit, maybe I'll start reaching out again.
Well, you mentioned this before about Andrew's fandom being like a community. What do you think it is about his music that creates that sense of community? And you, like us, you've traveled for his shows. You went on the rock boat. We also went on the rock boat. That was like one of the most amazing experiences. Hopefully he does his own sort of, fan event like that himself here soon, word on the street. But what do you think it is about the community and Andrew's fans that really like brings people together?
Well, I think, what I said earlier about him being a genuine good person who likes to connect with others. We find a lot of those people in the fan group as well. There's so many Andrew McMahon fans I've met that are just such good people. And I've had them now, a lot of them on my podcast, and I've met them at shows. I talked to them, online via the podcast socials, but also in the Facebook group, and in the Andrew McMahon Facebook group, not my Facebook group. And I've just met so many nice, great people that it's like a new set of friends. It was weird going on the rock boat and recognizing people from the fan group and feeling that sense of community live in person after such a tough year as we know we all had. I'd gone to a couple of pod shows prior to that, and actually I did get to meet like 12 or 15 fans at the Pontiac, Michigan pod shows. Nice. But it was going to that rock boat. I think we were like 400 people that were just there for Andrew McMahon. I think somebody told me that. And where else can you go in the world where you have 400 people, you're surrounded by 400 people, plus a lot of other hardcore music fans in general that are there for the same purpose. And you're wearing your, Jimmy, you're wearing your Jack's t-shirt, and I'm wearing my, Something in the Wilderness t-shirt, but usually I'm wearing an Andrew McMahon t-shirt of some sort. And that's how we identify each other, in places like that. It's like, oh, you're here for Andrew. So it was almost a magical experience, to be honest.
We loved it. It was, like I said, it's just a big group of friends that are meeting up, and you're spending 5 nights, whatever it is, 5 days together. But the community piece is huge because, like, I'm going to say a majority of our friends, probably half of our friends are all Andrew fans. Like, we've met them at Phil's and things like that. I'm not sure if you know this or not, but me and Jess actually met at Dear Jack Chicago in 2015.
I did not know that.
We had the same group of friends. We had never met in person until that Dear Jack Chicago 2015, and now we're married. So
incredible.
Andrew is our matchmaker.
Yeah, but the community is amazing. Like, it's a good damn group of people that like actually care about each other.
Definitely. Yeah. And it's really nice to go to those shows now and not even, and maybe having nothing to do with the podcast that I do, but just people like saying hello because they recognize my picture from the Facebook fan group or something.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, you're Steve. You said you'd be at the show this time. Yeah. It's really neat to have that connection. Or waiting in line. When I was waiting in line for the Dear Jack show in November, we happened to get in line with some of the people that we knew through the fan group, and we went on a couple of the Hello Gone Days shows last year. Ran into people at both of those shows, so I knew after I went to the summer 2021 Pontiac shows that I would not be able to go to an Andrew show in the Midwest without seeing someone I knew, and that was really comforting, actually.
Yeah. Especially the Midwest, because Jess is from Chicago, so we lived in Chicago for a while, and it was like Michigan this way, Milwaukee this way. It's like within a 2 to 4 hour radius, you can hit all the shows, and you're gonna see the same people.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Now in Florida, it's a little bit different. You can drive 6 hours and still be in the same damn state. But at least he's hitting 3 of the shows in this upcoming tour. So
yeah, that's amazing. Finally, huh?
Right. Yeah. So we're hoping to see some people.
Yeah.
But I have a question. Is there like a certain song of any of Andrew's name changes that he's done? I'm sure another one's coming after this new album. But what song like initially made you like a fan of his?
I saw Something Corporate at Warped Tour in 2002. And as soon as I saw part of their set, I knew I had to rush home and download as many MP3s as I could, because that's how you got music at the time.
Yep.
And I kind of cobbled together Leaving Through the Window and some what I call bonus tracks, just like some demos and stuff from the other recordings that didn't make the album. And so I'd say it was songs like Fall, and which was ironically, that song's written by Josh Partington, not by Andrew, by the way.
Right.
So,
yep.
But I do love that. I love that. So that was one of the ones that hit hardest for me at the time. I Woke Up in a Car was a big one. That's one of the originals for me. And just some of the ballads like Kavanaugh Park and The Astronaut, Globes and Maps. And I was like, wow, these guys are, and I didn't think of the artist as Andrew McMahon at the time. I didn't even know his name for years.
Right. Yeah.
I only knew them as Something Corporate. And I was like, wow, these guys are very diverse in what they can do on an album. It's not just pop punk. It's pop punk, but it's also some other things going on. But what really solidified my fanhood and where I knew I was going to follow them forever. And again, I'm still in the Something Corporate era, was the North album.
Yeah.
I love that album so much. Every track on it, I believe it's a perfect album. And it was As You Sleep, the track one off of that album, solidified it for me. I knew that I was in for life. And then we all know what happened next with Everything in Transit, and then that's a top album of all time, and it goes on and on. But yeah, it really started with North for me.
Yeah, you're speaking my language, because SoCo, I'm very biased to them. Like 2002 was also when I saw them first, and it was just like nothing beats that. Like the Jack shows are fun, the Wilderness shows are fun, but nothing beats an old SoCo show. At least in my opinion.
Yeah, I love every era, but there's something special and different about each one as well. And the Something Corporate era was that young, rebellious, I mean, call it punk or pop punk if you want or don't, but it was definitely young, it was rebellious, it was freeing. And then Jack's Mannequin kind of streamlined the sound a little bit more, and but I loved that too. And I understand what Andrew's doing now. I call it the collaboration era. He's working with different producers, different songwriters, like a lot of our favorite emo artists are from 20 years ago, right? They're co-writing now with people, and they're experimenting, they're doing different sounds. And but yeah, once I heard those albums early on, I was like, all right, I'm gonna follow this guy wherever he goes. And I'd probably do the same for Josh Partington if he was still making music, because I loved his stuff too.
Yeah,
so
100%. I know you mentioned Rock Boat, and like you said, the Warped Tour is your first show. Is there any like specific moment or time, like is your favorite Andrew show or moment that you've had?
You guys may have been there for the same show. The show where I remember laughing and crying and just feeling so connected to what was happening in the room was that Andrew and John Foreman show on the Rock Boat 2 years ago.
We missed it.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
We went to go see Wilderness because I'm a diehard Wilderness fan.
They're pretty great. I just saw them the other night, actually, open for Jukebox the Ghost.
Yep.
Yeah. They're so good.
Yeah. We heard great reviews about that show though that you saw.
Yeah, I just I took video of Kavanaugh Park, but I typically don't. But I just remember I typically don't take video of full songs. But I just remember thinking I want to remember what this looked and sounded like. I won't capture the feeling. I'll just have that. But I want to remember what this looked and sounded like. So I occasionally I do that concerts with clips and things, and sometimes I take full songs. But like, I don't know. That was like almost spiritual. It was so cool. I mean, all the shows were. What was really also just neat on a side note about that show in particular is that I never thought I'd see Andrew McMahon in concert twice in one day. And that was kind of a, bucket list item I didn't know I needed.
Yep.
So, he played in the afternoon with John Foreman in the theater, and then he played outside, or no, he played back in the theater that same night, actually, and basically did the 3 piano set that he was touring on, which I skipped the 3 pianos tour in Ohio because I was so worried about getting COVID before getting on the Rock Boat and not being able to go. So I skipped those shows. So I was really fortunate to see that. So that whole Rock Boat experience was pretty legendary. Yeah,
that second theater show that night, that's when I was throwing all my money. He played, I think we were near you.
I think you were behind. I think it's coming back to me now because you guys are friends with Jess from New York, right?
Yeah.
And so I think you guys were standing behind me, and then I ended up meeting her on Thursday night at the show because she was standing in front of us. So we finally introduced ourselves.
He played Paper Rain, and I had just so much fake money, and I just threw it when he played it.
That's amazing. I love that song. What a great song.
Yeah. No, Rock Boat's amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was such a great experience, such a deepening experience that we actually went on a second time. We went on this past time, and that was pretty great as well. It was a different kind of Rock Boat for sure, and I knew it would be. I knew I wasn't going for one artist. It was kind of cool also to go in a different way and just go, I'm just going to go check out all these other artists. Whereas I felt very committed. Like I did not miss an Andrew show or a minute of an Andrew show on that first Rock Boat. The second time around, I was a little bit more flexible.
Yeah. It's not about this podcast, but you did get to see Magic Giant, I assume.
Yes. We saw them twice.
They are stellar.
Yeah. They're pretty great. We saw them from the hot tub. We sat in the hot tub and watched them one day. And then it was the previous night, I think. We saw them in the atrium. So that was good too. Yeah. They're great. I kind of regret not seeing them on the last night. They closed out the boat, but it was like 12:30 or 1 a.m. the show started. The show got pushed back, and it was like 12:30 or 1 a.m. show on the very last night. And I was exhausted. Like I was up and dancing and jumping around for the neon trees up until like 10:30 that night. And I was like, I think I'm done. I think I'm ready for Rock Boat to be over.
Ready to go back to home.
Yeah. It's exhausting, but it's amazing too.
I was going to ask you about other bands because you mentioned that you had a lot of like feelings in that one show that you saw with Andrew. But is there any other musicians that you're listening to right now that evoke that same type of feeling for you?
There has been, and I hate to I hope I'm not overdoing it with the Rock Boat stuff, but I discovered the American authors on the first boat and fell in love with them. My wife was a little bit more into them than I was. I knew a couple of the hits, but I absolutely fell for American authors at the first boat, and they kind of became my go-to on the second boat. We watched all 3 shows and experienced something very special with them too. It was just such the 3 shows we watched first off were just so different from each other. But the third one, their new album hadn't yet come out. It was coming out a week after the boat. And they played the entire new album that nobody had heard yet all the way through, all 10 songs. And then of course they played a few hits at the end. And but when they get on stage, it's like Andrew McMahon. It's a communal thing. We're all, and I've heard Andrew say this before, we're all in this together. We're doing this thing together. It's not an artist up on stage speaking to or singing to or playing for an audience. It's us all together hanging out, having a good time. And that's what American Authors really did for me. And I've checked out their albums. Their album they just released is amazing. I think I'm biased because just that connection I felt when they played it. But their third album's really great too, called Seasons. I'd highly recommend Seasons. It's very different from their newest album, Best Night of My Life. But so that's good stuff. I also got really into the Beaches, who were also on the most recent Rock Boat. It's an all-female rock and roll punk, whatever you want to call them. And they just blew me away in a different way. I've rarely gone into a concert where I don't really know any of the music and been blown away and just couldn't wait to get home and listen to it and just really dive deep into their material. But I will see those two artists, the Beaches and American Authors, which by the way are very different artists from each other, but I would see either of those bands in concert anytime they're nearby, because that's the connection I feel when I go to an Andrew show. I felt that with those two artists.
So is there a song that you would add to our mixtape then? Like what song is like now, so awesome that you love, like on repeat? Like what would you add to the mixtape?
Now, do you want an Andrew McMahon song or
it doesn't have to be Andrew.
Or a non-Andrew song?
Yeah, he's already on there.
Okay. Okay, then I'm gonna say Same Bed by American Authors, because it's off of their new album. The first time I ever heard it was live. And again, I normally don't hear a song for the very first time live and love it right away, but I absolutely loved it. Like I was singing along the first time I ever heard it somehow. I don't even know how. But if you listen to the song called Same Bed off of their new album, it's kind of a sing-along, kind of a happy sounding song, but it's also pretty deep without the lyrics being deep, by the way. I'm a big lyrics guy. I will admit these aren't deep poetic lyrics in the song. They're just like, but it paints a picture of a feeling that you get. It's like a road trip, deep thinking song. And I just love playing it in my car, rolling the windows down and singing along. So Same Bed by American Authors, highly recommend.
Adding it to the mixtape.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Now, let's get into some Andrew McMahon new music. You're a super fan. I really am curious about what you think of this new album. Andrew just dropped the album Tilt at the Wind No More. It's a mouthful to say, but it's really good to listen to. At first listen, you could definitely tell there's a change of pace from his previous albums, and there's a much different production value to this one. It's a big standout because Jeremy Hatcher is working on this one, who's done stuff with like Harry Styles and Lizzo. He just won a Grammy. Completely insane. So what were your thoughts the first time that you listened to this full album? Because Andrew did release some songs ahead of time, but now we get the whole picture of the album. What did you think of it?
Do you mind if I go back in time a little bit and talk about a couple of the singles and then kind of fast forward back?
Go right ahead.
Is that cool? Okay. So I really liked Stars. I heard that song and I got to hear it in concert during Hello Gone Days. And I was like, yeah, this is right in my wheelhouse. It's Andrew. It's a little bit more pop Andrew than what we were talking about earlier, something corporate, Jack's Mannequin. But I really, really enjoy that. And I still enjoy it to this day. It's probably one of my favorite tracks on the album. Now that I've listened to the whole thing through, it's really a standout. It's one that I haven't heard enough yet. Haven't gotten sick of. And when it comes on, when I play the 11 tracks through, I really kind of perk my ears up a little bit. Yeah. So it's, so it took me a little bit longer to get into, but I will say I saw Skywriting being performed in concert at the Dear Jack show in Chicago. And I liked it 10 times more, if not more, when I heard it in concert. Have you guys heard that one in concert?
Yeah, we were at Chicago.
Oh, you were? Okay. Oh, we have been in some of the same places. Okay.
Yeah. It's way better live.
Yeah.
That happens a lot for me though. Like, what was it? Island Radio. We weren't really like into that song until we saw it live, and it completely changed the whole song.
Absolutely. So majority of Zombies on Broadway, I was that way. I was a little bit more, that was a little bit harder to crack into my favorites, that album, until I saw it live. And I was like, I get it now.
I get it. Yep.
Yeah. And I think that's what's going to happen with some of these songs. It happened with Skywriting. Now, so going back to your question, fast forward to the full album. So I've heard the full album now, and there's some really standout tracks.
I was going to say, what's like your standout ones, do you think? Like, pick 3.
Yeah. So what's interesting about this is that they're not typical Andrew McMahon songs. Looking at the whole scope, those like us have been fans for 20 years of his. So Lying on the Hood of Your Car, I think I'm probably biased because I talked about that one, but I love how dark and mysterious that song sounds. I enjoy the lyrics. It's nothing too deep, nothing to try to figure out. It's just a story. And I just love I love the sound of it. It gets me every time. I was really surprised that was the album opener. It was that was super interesting to me. I did not expect that. So I love the way the album opens with that. And and next up, another, again, not something I would expect from Andrew, but New Friends. That one surprises me because I just said, like, I'm not really into that like dancey poppy sound, but I don't know if it was that I was sitting at a pool with my headphones on in Florida when I first heard the whole album all the way through in my headphones, but that just like connected the sound of it. So
I definitely think that like when you listen to the album all together, it makes so much sense.
It does.
Like each song, the way that it's layered, like as a whole, it really paints a story. And even with the song New Friends, lyrically, it's very interesting. So I think there's a lot of interesting lyrics in this album, and you can tell that Andrew's actually like pushed himself a little bit more with this one.
Yeah, he goes off in some different directions. I mean, we get the deep poetic lyrics in some places, we get the stories in others, we get the very visual lyrics. The third one, which I feel like is probably maybe the most personal song on the album, in my opinion, to him. And that's just one person's opinion. But Little Disaster just feels very personal. I just find myself singing along to that one. That's really, I would say in the last week or two, that's the one that's been jumping out at me. It's like every time it's like I almost look forward to that one coming on now. I play the album, but I'm like, oh, I can't wait for that track to come on.
I know it's coming soon.
Yeah.
We talked about that song, and something that I thought was interesting with it is it's basically him singing to his younger self. Like that's such a brilliant idea because he's been through so much. I just love that concept. Like he's saying like, get your shit together, man. Like talking to his younger self. And I just love that.
Yeah. I'm a pretty reflective and nostalgic person. And so that sort of thing really works for me.
Yeah, I agree.
I wish I could write poetry. I wish I could write songs. I don't and I can't. But I feel like that would be the best way to approach it if I was.
Yep, I agree. I have heard some like mixed reviews. We always hear mixed reviews on albums, like when they first come out. It's like, to me, it's like I might not like a song today, but 3 months from now I might love it. Some people are saying they miss like the Jack's Mannequin, even though I think Stars sounds like Jack's Mannequin to me. What are your thoughts? I know you just mentioned Zombies, but what are your thoughts of like the evolution of the Wilderness albums from like start to where we are now?
The good news is, for me personally, I've grown with the music. And that's not to say that people who don't like it haven't grown. It's just that it's more fitting for me than it would have been 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I probably wouldn't have listened to this kind of music. And I said I was ride or die. All right. I declared myself ride or die years ago. I will find something to enjoy about all of the music. It's a good, the way I look at it, and I see Weezer this way too, right? So Weezer gets a lot of hate, like you were talking about, where they put out new music and half the fans are like, what is that? What are they doing? And I feel that way sometimes about them too. But it's the same with Andrew. If I can get a few songs that I love every few years, I don't need 10 or 11 that, amazing, perfect tracks. If I can get a few, I'm happy.
So
and I got more than that this time. So
yeah. You can't love everything he does as much as I want to. It's like, I would love to say every single song he's done I love, but 98%, I probably have. But
right. I don't know if anybody could love every song on that album the same way because it's so different. It's so dynamic, right? I mean, there's dancey pop songs. There's these piano only ballads. There's like a dark poetic storyline. There's a New Friends. So I could see why I haven't heard anybody else talk about that song, New Friends. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up. I'm curious about your guys' thoughts on that, because I think it sounds like a Sugar Ray song from 20 years ago or something.
I didn't think about it like that.
And it's not a dig at Andrew or anybody, because I liked 1459 by Sugar Ray. So if you want to, if we're, if you want to make a song that sounds like 1459 by Sugar Ray, I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what it reminds me of.
Yeah, that's funny.
Like I said with that one, I really like the lyrics of it. It's kind of funny. It makes me wonder, like, who's he talking about?
Yeah.
I want to know. Give me the tea. Like, I'm so curious now.
I'm like that with his lyrics too. I'm like, ooh. I mean, if you've listened to any episodes of my podcast, I dig into that stuff and I try to figure it out. And I'm like, I feel like I'm trying to be a sleuth sometimes. I'm like, so what did he mean by that one? So I completely get it, Jess.
Well, we kind of talked about how like this album's evolved, right? It has more of like the technology aspect to the music behind it. But, a lot of his older fans aren't used to that sound. Completely understand. But a mutual friend of ours, our friend Lisa from AM Chalk, she mentioned that this is Andrew's first time making a fourth album with any of his monikers. So I think that maybe this album might be pushing a little more to be like radio friendly. And that also brings, as a fan that you've been around for a long time, that brings new fans. Right. And I was curious as to what you felt when it comes to like people gatekeeping the band or like taking over the front of the lines and things like that, because I've been guilty of being like, oh well, this is a new band, I don't want to talk to them, I've been around forever. But I've really tried in the last like 5 to 10 years to like be more accepting of new people that are interested in Andrew's music, because I think I've mentioned this before, but as fans, it's our job to get other people to like this music.
Yeah.
And when people see us enjoying it, they start to enjoy it. One example of that would be we saw Andrew in December at a festival down here in Florida. And when we were leaving the festival one night, there was this kid and his mom walking behind us. And he was like, who was that one guy that was like riding around on that thing? And his mom was like, oh, I don't know. And in my head, I'm like, Andrew McMahon.
Yeah.
But she's like, oh, I think it was Andrew McMahon. He was like, that guy was really good. And in my heart, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like this kid that's like 16 is like excited because he just saw Andrew. So what do you think about new fans coming into this new music?
Oh, I hope and wish for it for Andrew, because I'm always rooting for him. Like I said earlier, he's such a genuine good person, even outside of the music itself. And I want someone like that to be successful. And success can be defined in a lot of different ways to different people. But I know that it would help him out, help his career out in terms of financially, but also longevity, if he broke with a huge single that hit among the masses, the young kids, if you will. But I've had a couple people on the podcast that are now the recent college graduates, both of them that I'm thinking of right now. There's a third actually. So there's three that learned about Andrew McMahon, I'd say in the last 5-6 years, are now super fans and try to go to the shows, spread the good word of Andrew, let's say, like I do. And it's really neat to see. So it's not just those young kids that we're bringing to the shows. Like I brought my kids to the Dear Jack Chicago. I know other fans that bring their kids. That's awesome too. But it's really important that these artists do engage the younger fans, like the teenagers, the kids in their 20s that are coming up. That's how they're going to have a longer lasting career. And there are some things that they need to do to like TikTok, for example, right? Like I don't even know how to TikTok. I've never touched the stuff, but I won't. But these artists have to have a social media presence now. They have to do that stuff that may be a little bit uncomfortable for them, but that's the way to bring in new fans. So in terms of gatekeeping, I don't believe in it. I never really have. I think I've always rooted for my favorite artists, whether that be, I in the past, I've been really into artists like Jewel and Green Day, and I've mentioned Weezer, and I've always wanted them to get as, famous and successful as possible. And it's not like I'm going to be like, see, I told you so, or anything like that when they did, or they do, if they haven't yet, but it's more like, I love it, and I want other people to love it too. I hope other people love it with me. So,
yeah, there's actually one more song I wanted to ask you about, Smoking Ribbons, because I feel like, I know I've read the description that Andrew's given for the album and the songs and their meanings, but this one almost feels like I got a little emotional the first time I heard it on the album, because it feels like an homage to the fans. This feels like a song that can replace a tried and true, like La La Lie, the way that it's singable and that his daughter's on that track. And it feels like that could be a song of the summer to me.
I completely agree with you. When I think it was watching that music video, that's when, and I think it was the day after, I think I watched that the day after, maybe it was the day the album came out. And whenever the music video came out was when I watched it. And I watched it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the song, just like you said, the song of the summer. This is the one we're going to be singing along to at the shows. I think it's that line, I'll write the words if you sing along.
It's like, I can already picture my friends in the pit dancing and singing and swaying. Like, I can already picture that. And I think even the lyrics of that song, the message I kind of got from it is like, it's time to move on. Like, we're moving on to the next thing, guys. Like, let's do this. So I kind of feel like that's a little bit of like, here you go, guys. This is for the next chapter.
Yeah, and I think that's what Andrew does with his different projects and with his different albums, at least the last few, is that he kind of leaves behind what he did last time. I mean, let's face it, most of this album sounds nothing like Upside Down Flowers.
Oh, zero. Yeah.
And as a fan, you got to be okay with it. Obviously, the artist was okay with it himself. So he's just, he's like, that was 2018 or whatever. This is who I am in 2023, and embracing that attitude and embracing, and I think the song itself that you're referring to, Smoking Ribbons, it is, I think it is a dedication to the fans and who he is now, who we are together as a fan group. And that feels really special that he did that, through the music for us. And I sure hope he plays it in May. I'm going to see him on May 20th in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Really excited.
Nice.
And, and then also I just learned today on the day of this recording that he's doing a late show in Indy on the day that he's there for a festival. I wasn't planning on going to the festival because I didn't like any of the other artists playing that day, to be honest. So I didn't want to pay $100 for a half hour of Andrew. And I usually won't do that unless it's a festival of acts a bunch that I really want to see.
Right.
But he is doing a late show. So I'm trying to convince my wife to drive to Indy with me during the day, go to he said it's going to start at 10:15 at the Hi-Fi, and then drive back the next morning. Basically, we happen to have the next day off.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So I will just tell you to go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be like, no, you should think about this. I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
How far to drive? Let's go.
Yep. It's only 3 hours. Just have to find a place to stay over there. And but I've never, before the last few years, I've never traveled so much for an artist. I've never put so much time, dedication, gas money, money itself into an artist. But I think it's going back to what we were talking about earlier. It's not just showing up and watching the live music and going home. I did that recently for a jukebox show, and that was awesome. I love Jukebox the Ghost. Like the opening act, Wilderness. It was fun. I went by myself, and I like I do for some concerts, then I went home. With an Andrew show, it's a different experience. I feel like I'm there with other people.
Right.
Yeah. Like
and that's why I go.
Your people, your AM fam.
Yeah.
Jimmy, do you want to ask the last question we have? I mean, I don't want to keep you too long. I know you got kids to feed and stuff.
It's one more question.
You could probably talk for like 2 hours about this.
I could talk forever about Andrew. Let's face it. Like my conversations on my own podcast are getting longer and longer. I've noticed. Like I try to keep it to an hour. The last episode was an hour and a half. I'm like, okay, this is just what it is now. Apparently.
Yeah.
We just talk about Andrew all night.
Right. So we've talked about his lyrics. I know how much you love lyrics. So I think this is actually a good way to end the podcast. To me, like this album is probably one of his most creative, especially as Wilderness, because he paints the picture of like nostalgia with imagery of like stars, space, water. Going back to that 2002 SoCo days with space. Do you think these themes are like a comfort for him, and that's why he keeps bringing them up?
I do. I think it's something, they say in general, not music related necessarily, but they say write what you know. And I think that's what he knows. That's what's in his head. And that's what's important to him. That's how he sees the world. And he's just basically like a visual artist, paints pictures, and some of them are of the same thing, but in different ways. I think that's what he's doing with his lyrics. He's just saying it in different ways. And I think you're spot on there, that it's a comfort for him. It's a pocket for him that he's found. And it's like, hey, this is just where my head's at. And it's faithful to himself. Even when I mentioned on my own interview with him, and I said, hey, when I saw the title lying on the hood of your car, I guess I thought of I woke up in a car.
Right. How could you not? Yeah.
Yeah. And so we started talking about that, how he refers to planets and stars and space and things like that. And in the water and the water rising up and things like that. And he's like, it's just I write about what's in my head, and that's what's in my head. So fair enough.
That's good. I think it's a comfort to us too, because no matter what album it is, there's like that little trace all the way back to something corporate.
I feel like it's these hidden Easter eggs at this point. And did you guys watch the Stars music video?
Yeah.
So that has a lot of visual imagery that ties back to a lot of his lyrics from the past, which I just loved. I just ate that stuff up. I was like, ooh, my wife and I were both like, and she doesn't normally nerd out as much as I do about this stuff, but even she was like, ooh, I know that one. Like, I know what that's from. So it was fun.
Yeah. He's brilliant in that way.
Yeah.
Like it's so smart. So.
Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. This has been awesome. And I know we're going to end up running into you at a show, probably the Dear Jack benefit.
I sure hope so.
Yeah. We gotta link up and actually hang out, because we seem to be going to the same shows anyway.
Right.
Definitely. Yeah, we know some of the same people. We're in the same circle. we're going to the same shows. Right? So, yep. So
we're so thankful to have you join us and share your thoughts. Can you just share with everybody like where they can find your podcast and find your info?
Yes, Something in the Wilderness podcast is available on basically any podcatcher that you're using, Spotify, Apple Music, Google, Podbean, all of them really. It's on there. You could listen on YouTube. It's not a video podcast at all, but you can listen to the audio on YouTube. Some people prefer it that way. And you can definitely hit me up on Instagram. So Something in the Wilderness on Instagram. I'm pretty active on there. I love chatting with fans. So it is so exciting to me when people listen to the show and then they'll chat me about what I talked about on there, because that's the meat of it for me. That's the reward. That's a good way to put it. You got the words for me. That's the reward, because that's the payoff for all this, because it's like, wow, not only somebody listening, but they're reacting, and we get to talk about it now. And so it's things like this, the conversation we're having, the conversations I get to have with my guests, and even the chats I have on Instagram are all part of the fun for me, and the pinnacle of it, really.
Yeah, like you even like when you first started, you were like, you knew about Keegan, you knew about Hunter, so you've listened to both of those episodes already. It's like, that's a win for us. Like, you listen to it and you learn something. It's like that's all we want to do. It's like, we love doing this podcast, but it's like, you're like branching out.
It's that same community, right? Like we're all like sharing the music that we love, and there's nothing better than that.
I love the concept. Yeah, I love the concept, the mixtape. So that's awesome. And I feel honored that. Oh my gosh, that is so cool. I love that. Is there words on it too?
It's actually the plane and the banner from Everything in Transit. And then it has the 2 palm trees, and then it says Everything in Transit. And I don't know if you can see this, but this is people and things with television.
Yeah, it's blurring. The Zoom is blurring it.
Sorry, I don't know if you can see. Yeah, I'll send you pictures online.
Yeah, definitely do that, because I love that. That's really cool. So I don't have any tattoos, but I got a lot of t-shirts.
That's all.
There you go.
Yeah. But no, this has been a blast, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. I'm honored to be on here, and if you're both up for it, I'd love to have you on the podcast sometime. We can pick an Andrew song that I haven't talked about yet, and we'll talk about it on there.
Let's talk about North.
Yes, yeah, let's do a North track. I love it. Well, I haven't done one of those in a while, actually.
Okay, we're definitely up for that.
We'll make it happen.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you both so much. Thank you, you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you guys for listening. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe everywhere that you get your podcast. And don't forget to send us your favorite songs to our website, theultimatemixtape.com. You can see under our contact section where to put that at. And then while you're at it, make sure to check out our blog. We do a lot of reviews about shows we've seen. My pictures are up there, so definitely check that out. And we hope to see you at a show soon.
Make sure you're checking back on the website for updates and future guests. There's so much more to come. Thanks for listening.